Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Yeah.
You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show till Mets do us part. John from Brooklyn, Ibby reps NJ. We're the other team, I don't care what your friends say. Mets fans, we focus like a sensei. Listen to the podcast Monday, Wednesday. Made a couple bad plays, but we still won. Character, yup, we're gonna build some. Are you gonna check the pod? Is real fun. Just like Mookie, I will, son. So invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show.
Available now on all streaming platforms. If you love the New York Mets, check out Till Mets Do Us Part. Enough rapping. Let's get to yapping.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Til Mets Do Us Part. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Twitter. I just had to exhale real hard for one quick second. John Saponaro out in Los Angeles, California, or I guess if I'm being super specific, out in Burbank, California, which is where I now reside. And that means my co-host, Matt Ibanez, holding things down back in New Jersey. Ibby, look, I know it's a loaded question on a day like today, a little somber, a little bit of a look back. We're going to get into a lot of stuff here today, but how are you feeling?
John, I'm doing okay. The thing I love about our show is that it always gives us time to really reflect on things that might have happened a few days prior, calm down, and speak with level heads. Because that's the one thing we always want to make sure we bring to the show is level-headedness. And I think today I feel good. I feel good, and I'm ready to talk about what had happened, not only in the NLCS, specifically Game 6, but really about the entire season and a look back. And you know, I said in the chat before you got here that I thought people were going to appreciate the shirt that I'm wearing today. You can't really see it too much at the moment, but I'm going to show you what I am wearing. And I'm upset because my plan was to wear this on Monday to work in hopes that there would be a Game 7, because if I wore this shirt, everyone at work, knowing how big of a Mets fan I am, they would probably get a good laugh at the shirt in general, because a teacher wearing this is probably pretty ridiculous. But this is what the shirt was, just a giant face shirt of Grimace. And I know people, you know, are going to look back on everything with Grimace and OMG and the entire thing. It's all part of the 2024 team, and it should stay there. But I'm going to save some of my thoughts for when we really get into it. But all in all, I'm doing well, and I'm ready to speak on the 2024 New York Mets.
I am too. And you know what? A lot of this we can get into later, like you said, but there is stuff that needs to be left in the past. Like I joked around and I said, if the Mets win the World Series this year, I'm going to get a Grimace tattoo. And I was going to get a Grimace tattoo, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's over now. It was fun. We can look back on it fondly, but like Grimace, OMG. And, you know, I shot it out Jerome last week. I talked to Jerome this week during the week and asked him if he would want to come on the show and talk about, you know, how the season went for him and how, you know, this little creation that he made kind of spawned this whole situation for him. And he kindly obliged. I told him, hey, you know, we eulogize the season once the season ends. So it's not going to be this week, but at some point in the future, we would love to have you on and just kind of talk about it. And so he agreed. So that's something that we're looking forward to. We don't have a date yet, but I bring that up because OMG was terrific. You know, I didn't get, because I live out here, I didn't get my OMG pin till last week when he came out to Dodger Stadium. And, you know, it's something I'm going to keep fondly. It's something that I am going to remember moving forward. It's something that will probably last, you know, on like I'll find a Mets hat to permanently lock that onto and kind of keep that as this fun reminder of the run that we went on. But one of the things that people need to understand is that these runs happen and then it's over. whether they win or not, right? Like if it's the rally monkey, if it's the Red Sox, the idiots, right? Like that stuff, it doesn't matter. Like that Red Sox team won a lot, but the second year after that, they weren't idiots anymore. Like you have to put that stuff away. The Mets franchise is going to have to do it, and the fan base is going to have to do it. And as fans, because I trust David Stearns, and we'll talk about his press conference later, but as fans, I just want to say that we're going to have to put that stuff aside in more ways than one, because there are some free agents on this team that played a big role that may not necessarily, have a role on this team in 2025. And you have to separate your head from your heart. You have to separate the unbelievable moments that will never go away that the 2024 Mets gave us as we start to look forward. So it's just a little bit of I don't want to throw the salt in anybody's wound. I don't want to rain on anybody's parade. I don't want to bring anybody down if they were starting to feel better. I just think that these things are fun and you have to compartmentalize them because every season is its own ecosystem. And shout out to Aunt Rivera, Subway to Shea. I see that he's in the comments, or at least he was. I listened to his show kind of in preparation for this one. I wanted to get Ant's real take on this. And shout out to Ryan Finkelstein, Locked on Mets, another guest of the show, a friend of the show. And I listened to his show to try to get thoughts on this because I wanted to really hear a few other folks and how they felt in the aftermath of what was going on. But, it's just, you got to separate some of these things. And I think that that's what a lot of today is going to be about. When we say that we're eulogizing the Mets season, it'd be like, eulogies are somber. There's a part of it that is, kind of fondly reminiscing, right? All of that goes into a eulogy. So there's going to be a lot of that. The tone of this show this week might be a little up and down. It might be a little sad. It might be a little happy. It might be a little frustrated. And it might be a little positive looking forward. And I think that's the appropriate thing.
Yeah, and look, I still have to go back and listen in full to Ant's show, and I'll probably listen to Ryan's as well. And I didn't, to be honest, once that game ended on Monday, I kind of, on Sunday, I should say, I kind of separated myself from baseball. I kind of got away from Twitter for, a couple of hours, day or two, just to, like I said, distance a little, because, when your team's in the thick of it like this, it becomes part of like your everyday. And I joked with people, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life now, because my life basically revolved around the Mets schedule and making sure I was home or I was in a place where I was going to watch the game. So I wanted to get away for a little bit. But like I said before, being able to get away for a couple of days, now being able to talk about it, I think I'm in the proper space. And you can let me know and I'll listen, like I said, to what they said. But I do feel I'm in the right space to really look at everything as a whole. But just to go back to what you said before, I agree with you 1000% in terms of, I'm wearing this shirt for fun today because it's part of what we're talking about today. But then odds are I'll wear this shirt every now and again, but it's something to look back on fondly. It's not something where for once you're going to look back on a Mets season and it's not going to be like 100% disappointment, or looking back on it in disgust, or looking back on it as, maybe it's a little bit of what could have been, but you're not looking back on it, in a way where you're just like, ugh, like 2022 was very, like just frustrating. And then obviously what 2023 was as a whole, like you look back at that season and you're just like, ugh, terrible. This is not that. This was lightning in a bottle, and it didn't catch to the very end, which sucks. But we look back on it and I feel confident when I say the fondness that I have, and I'm sure that you have and others have, for, let's say, the 2015 season. I had so much fun during that season. But 2024, even though I got out to the stadium less times than I did in 2015, and I actually went to playoff games in 2015, the difference between the two is not that much, but I'm going to look back on this and just think of nothing but positive thoughts and the start of something. I listened to other people who had mentioned the idea, or Gary Cohen, when he talked about it and saying how, 2024 for the New York Mets could be 1984 for the New York Mets. Mm-hmm. It could be 1999 for the New York Mets. I often have said that, 2005 kickstarted something for this franchise, even though they didn't win or get to the ultimate place or win the ultimate prize, and we saw what happened in, 07, 08, like that, those downfalls or whatever. But, 05 kickstarted something that was special for 06, 07, and 08 in terms of, playing well, not finishing well, but playing well. So I think that 24, we finally have something where you can look forward to what's ahead, and you can look back on a season that, yeah, you fell short, but did anyone really, really think, to be the biggest diehard fan ever, did we really think how this team was constructed back in February, March, April, what was going on in May, that we were going to push the Dodgers to Game 6 of the NLCS? Like, it's crazy to think about, but I will look back on this season no matter what with a smile on my face. And I have more to say, but we'll get into it in a little bit.
Yeah, let's check in with the comments for now, because a lot of our regulars, and by the way, if you are watching this show for the first time, welcome to Til Mets Do Us Part. We're live basically every Wednesday at 5:30 Eastern or thereabouts on YouTube and Twitter. Best way to keep up with us is to follow us on Twitter at Til Mets Do Us Part, or preferably, because you just have more access on the YouTube channel, is to subscribe to the channel and turn notifications on. That way you can become a full-fledged participant in the live show like so many of the regulars. I mean, this is not just, it started out as John and Ibby talking into a microphone about the New York Mets, but it has become John and Ibby and everybody in the comments talking about the New York Mets. What you guys do in the live chat is such an important part of what this show has become. So for anybody who might be new and watching for the first time, subscribe, turn notifications on. That's how you're going to know, oh, hey, they're going live. I want to check it out. Even if you're going to be a little late, it's never too late to jump into the conversation. That said, got a lot of our regulars chiming in. First and foremost, Charlie saying, no tears. We had a good season and the future looks promising. We got Brad saying, wish we were playing Friday, but this was an awesome season. Missed them already. That's true. Charlie also saying about 16 weeks until pitchers and catchers report to spring training. Not that I'm counting, of course. LGM. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for that. Charlie always keeping us. Charlie and Jeff Cohen always keeping us honest on those likes and subscribes.
Yes,
the way that Armand and a couple of other folks always keep us honest with, like, oh no, this is this person's stat line, or this is when they release the lineup, which we appreciate so much. We don't have a producer or a numbers guy or somebody, so it's basically just Ibby and I trying to pull up stuff while we're talking. So thank you for reminding us. Douglas Barnes, hi, y'all. It sucks the season is over, but at least the Mets finally have a manager and a president of baseball ops that isn't going anywhere, that we can all have confidence in. Amen.
Amen.
Mr. Nobody, great Stearns presser today. We're going to talk about that coming up in a little bit. Armand calling this the welcome to the wellness check episode. That's very fair.
It's a good one.
Jeff Cohen, the aforementioned Jeff Cohen. OMG was fun. Grimace was fun. Rally Pimp was fun. Haktua, not so fun. Seymour Wiener was fun. But it was the play of the team that was the most fun. Absolutely true. James Dowling, biggest thing from this year is it's only year one with David Stearns. And look where they got. Bright future ahead, I'd say. And then this one from Armand, which is funny. This season is like when you're a kid and you go to summer camp and you have that summer girlfriend or boyfriend, and when camps ends, you'll never be together again.
That's a good one.
That is a good analogy. Now, I grew up in Brooklyn. I never went to camp. I don't know if you went to camp.
I never went to camp. No. Not family ones, no.
But I think everybody can relate to that, because everybody has had that sort of feeling when they're a kid, right? Like, even if it's during the school year, right? Like,
absolutely.
You get your first girlfriend or boyfriend, quotes girlfriend, boyfriend, when you're a young kid in school. And then it's like, oh, see you next year. And then, you know what I mean? Like, maybe they move or they come back and it's just like, what? Like, you never saw that person over the break. So that is that. And I think that's how the Mets have to kind of look at this too, Ibby. And look, I don't want to break down Game 6. I think Game 6 is in the rear view. But let's talk about the series really quickly as a whole. I think the Mets played damn good, all things considered. I think a lot of the stuff I tweeted and we talked about last week rang true. The Dodgers are a better team. The Dodgers are a better constructed team than the Mets today, and I think the better team won the series. Now, having said that, two things really jump out as to what damned the Mets in this series, and that was leaving runners on base and walking too many guys. Now, I understand that there was like 46 runs scored in 6 games by the Dodgers, which is a crazy high amount. But the Mets also walked over 40 people in that game. So not everybody who walked scored, but when you look at it as that, it'd be for a 1-to-1. You put too many runners on base against a lineup like that, you're going to get hurt. And if you don't cash in, and the Mets did not cash in every opportunity they had, I think 2 of the losses, they had left 12 men on and 13 men on. That's a dozen and a baker's dozen. That ain't going to get it done against the Dodgers. And, I'm watching these games and I'm looking, my girlfriend and I are watching these games. We're trying to move in and we're unpacking and doing all this stuff. And, it would be like the 3rd inning or the 2nd inning. And, it's two men on and 2 out, like 2nd and 3rd, 2 out, and the Mets don't score. And I'm like, man, you can't do that. You got to put the hammer down. Look at the games the Mets won. When they came out and they put the hammer down, they were able to beat the Dodgers. You have to go shot for shot with them. Your pitching is not good enough. And I think, again, we'll talk about Stearns' comments in a little while, but I think he was spot on when he said they ran out of gas. They were pushed to the brink from June 1st through game 6 of the NLCS. And I use this analogy all the time, but it is a team akin to a basketball team that gets down early, makes a big time run in the 3rd or 4th quarter to get the game within 1 or 2 or 3, and then winds up losing by 15 because all they had to do was just stay on it, try to score. They get it so close and they run out of gas. And I think that's what happened to the Mets here in 2024.
Yeah, just think about what you just said, talking about how they ran out of gas, and I think about Sean Manaea, and I think about what do you got?
I'm sorry. Stevie Mac says the last thing I want to hear is a breakdown of Game 6. That's why we're not doing it. That's why we're not
going to do. I know I put it in the notes, but we're not going to do it. No, but just hearing what you just said about how the team just ran out of gas. And looking about how this team is constructed, I'm going to talk more about it when we talk about the presser and the things that Stern said, and maybe even a preview of an outlook for the offseason. But, this team really, really squeezed every single drop out of every single signing that he made, that David Stearns made. And I was laughing because I see, who was it? Brad saying how we started with Joey Wendell and ended with the NLCS Game 6, and Joey Wendell feels like an eternity ago. It didn't even happen.
That's the Mets version of started from the bottom. Now we hear.
Yes, seriously. When you look at it in that sense, it's wild. But they, you look at everything, everyone getting the production that they got out of Vientos, who we can talk about. The lack of production from Pete throughout the season to then what ends up happening in the playoffs, but the lack of there, and then having to pick up in other areas. What Harrison Bader provided you, at least in the first half, not so much the second half. Getting what you got out of Manaea and Severino to stabilize, but then realizing, or maybe people didn't really realize, because I can be honest, I wasn't counting his innings, and I didn't realize that Game 6 was his 36th start of the year. How he was up to 190 innings pitched.
More innings than he has ever pitched in his entire career.
I think that was probably 20 innings more than his highest point up into his career. And that, I think it was like 170 maybe.
His high water mark was in the 170s. I'm sure Armand's
going to get us.
No, I appreciate it. I looked it up the other day. His high water mark was in the 170s, and he did that, I think, last in 2022 or 2021. So he had been several years removed from doing that. And his other years, he really didn't come close. You're talking about 150, 90, 88, like all of this. So, you understand why. And shout out to the Mets, by the way, Ibby. I think Stearns talked about this in the presser, the training staff, but also the guys themselves, Severino and Manaea, who kept themselves healthy, and the Mets training staff who came up with a program to keep them healthy. My God, could you have thought when we started this show just a couple of years ago, or right before we started it when Wilpon still owned the team, that we would be sitting here saying, shout out to the Mets training staff?
Yeah, seriously. We, as a franchise, that I was there during the opening day where they booed the hell out, one of the opening days where they booed the hell out of Ray Ramirez when they were introducing everyone, because he has been, first of all, if you know names of people when it comes to the training staff, you know that there's a problem, because you shouldn't know those guys' names. You really shouldn't. And, the fact that we're, thankful for those people for putting Luis Severino on the right track to make sure he was watching and taking care of his diet and everything in terms of being prepared, that allowed him to make the most starts, to put him back on track to what he was in his early years as a Yankee, which ends up helping this team tremendously because, and we'll look back at some of our bold predictions as well, to be able to make 30 plus starts. It's wild. It really is. But like you said, to run out of gas is the best way to put it, because, I know we're not going to recap game 6, but I had a feeling, after that first inning, I thought he looked very tired. Mm-hmm. And to your point before about just scoring in general throughout the series, my side group chat that I was having with people that frequent our chat, TJ and Rube, we talked every game we talked, and just the frustrations of leaving guys on base, not having productive outs. And to your point, yes, the games they won were based off of jumping out early and taking advantage. And I know you said that the Dodgers were a better team, and you're right. They're a better team. They capitalized on situations when you're supposed to. And specifically with the bottom half of their lineup, we're so worried about people like, Shohei Ohtani, who I didn't think was that great in this series. I know he had a homer here and there, but I didn't think he was what everyone thought he was going to be. We're cursing the name of Tommy Edman. That's the name that we're cursing, because he batted .400 and he drove in 9 runs or whatever it was. The lack of respect that Mookie Betts gets because he plays with Shohei Ohtani. It's like Mookie Betts had a hell of a series too, but it was the guys at the bottom. It was the Edmonds. It was the Kike Hernandezes of the world. It was Will Smith finally getting a big hit. It was those guys that really tanked us. But I look back on the series in general, and I'm frustrated because there were opportunities. I know the Dodgers are a better constructed team, been there, done that type of team, understand what to do in these spots, and were able to capitalize. But I look back with slight frustration, because I think that if this team was able to just string together a couple of hits here and there, I think we're singing a different tune. I really do. And that's the one part that I'm very frustrated with. But to your point, you also, on the pitching end, you can't walk that many people. You can't. Not when you have people, 1 through 9 in that lineup that can, either put it out of the park or shoot the gap and just create chaos in the base paths. And we're a staff that can't handle the stolen base. Like all of these things, you put all of that together, it doesn't end well for you. And they still push it to game 6. But I wish there were things that could have been cleaned up in series, but you look at it and you go, maybe they couldn't do it in series. And that's why this offseason coming up is going to be so interesting to see how David Stearns goes about trying to, better his second act, if you will, in year 2, when his first act had them going to the NLCS.
Yeah, and Jeff Cohen, shout out to him, always asking the hard-hitting questions. John, how many cats do you have back there? Just the one.
I was trying to stay focused because
my cat was walking behind me. I have a cat and a dog now. For those of you who don't know, so me and my girlfriend moved in together, and she had a cat and a dog. So I am now a step parent of a cat and a dog, and they're both lovely and they're great. And eventually, I will have an office space where I can do this podcast kind of, uninterrupted and unencumbered. But for the meantime, at least for the next couple of weeks, I think we're going to have Mike. There he is, Mike, walking behind us on the couch sometimes. He's a cute little guy, and that's what he's going to do. But it's just the one cat just walking back and forth because he's trying to get his camera time. I think cats know. Cats know when there's a camera rolling. They just seem to know. Shout out to Armand. Sean Manaea's highest innings pitch was 179 and a third in 2021 with Oakland. So just over what we thought. So he was just under 20 innings difference, which, is still, it's a lot, especially when it's 3 years removed from that. And it's also not a number that he has hit, a lot. If you're looking at like a starter who for the first 5 years of their career, Ibby, always pitched, 190 innings. 200 innings, and then all of a sudden, couple of injury-plagued years or ineffectiveness, and they drop back, and then they find themselves in a situation where they've rebuilt like Manaea. Maybe they're just a little bit more accustomed to doing it because they have done it in the past. Manaea's literally never hit this number before. So, I don't sit here and say, man, he was too tired and that's a bummer. It's life. Like, that's the human side of this again, that we always try to preach, is that, it sucks, but you can't come down too hard on them for it, because that's human nature, man. Anybody's going to, he still took the ball. He still went out there and he gave it everything he had. I mean, here's Ant. I know he said this on his show the other day. They scored 5 runs in game 6. 5. That's good enough to win a game there. They fought hard until the last out. That is absolutely true. And then we have this one here. I think I just lost it. Oh, man.
Well, while you're looking for that one, I am gonna bring up this one from Ant just to just bring up the joke, because I was half asleep when he did his show the other day, and I jumped into the live comments, and I literally, right before I passed out, I literally just said, fuck Tommy Edman, and then I left, and I didn't wait for him to respond to me. I just said that because I was so angry with that freaking guy the entire series, just watching him. Like, of all people, it's this pain in the ass, and it was the guy that they got at the deadline. Like, all of it, like, if that trade doesn't happen, all of that, like, it just made me so freaking angry, because that was the one guy that goes out there and really puts the nail in our team's coffin, and puts us to bed. And that's the one thing that sucks, because it's like, really, Tommy freaking Edman, who's got to join the likes. It's always some guy like that. It's never the big name. I mean, yeah, there's Freddie Freeman types of the world as Met killers, but we all know the Met killers, and we all know it's always this little pesky pain in the ass that shouldn't be the one that does it. But of course, it always is. It always
seems to be that way. This was the other comment. It's actually from Ant that I wanted to pull up, which was the Mets didn't take advantage of the Dodgers' depleted pitching and rotation. And I agree there. Look, I don't want to sit here and say, like, wow, the Dodgers were so much the better team, the Mets didn't have a chance. The Mets had their chances in this series.
100%.
They were either too gassed or not good enough, or both, to take advantage of their chances. I picked the Mets in 6. I thought the Mets could win. I felt that, I told you, that eerie kind of quiet calm about game 6, because it just felt like, look, not that I was conceding defeat, but like, man, this team pushed and pushed and pushed. And I think the Dodgers had shown to that point that they were better. And like I said on Twitter, but the Mets have shown time and time again all season that may not matter. How many better teams than the Mets did the Mets beat en route to getting there? A lot. So, I don't want to cheapen it and make it sound like the Mets, because we talked about it last week, were some plucky team that was just happy to be there and just lucky to be there. I think the Mets had opportunities, but like I said, I think they were either too gassed or not good enough, or some combination of the two, to fully take advantage of them. And as I predicted, Mike is now the star of the show. Stephanie saying, hi, Mike. Stevie Mack asking, is the cat's full name Michael Conforto? Ant saying, no, Stevie, it's Mike Piazza Saponaro. And then Douglas saying, nah, it's Mike Pelfrey. It's none of them. I will tell you, it is Mike Wazowski, like Monsters Inc., because Mike has only one eye. So he's funny you say
he's
a one-eyed cat.
It's funny that you say Mike Wazowski, because I was doing a project today with my kids in health, and they were able to like use different names. And for the doctor's name for one of the people that we were doing, the kid actually used Mike Wazowski. So it's funny that we both have that name floating around. And of course, we'll talk about it today. So that is small world funny.
That is weird. But yeah, Mike Wazowski,
Mike Wazowski,
the one-eyed cat. And then you'll never see the dog because she doesn't care. But the dog's name is Gloria Delgado Pritchett, like Modern Family. I swear to God, those are the full names of both animals. So there you go for everybody who was keeping score at home. Ibby, there's a lot of different places we can go with this conversation now. Let's pull up a couple more comments, put this, kind of series talk to bed. Jeff Cohen said 100% John, those base on balls and runners in scoring position, just not getting the timely hits. That was their undoing. Again, whatever the reason was, that's the end result, is that they didn't show up in those spots. And then we got Rosie saying the Mets offense was inconsistent all year. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Carson always says this is who the Mets are. They're going to score 12 and then they're going to score nothing. And then they're going to score 10 and then they're going to score nothing. That's kind of what the Mets offense had become.
0 or 100.
We could talk more about whether or not coaches should be retained. I know that was asked of David Stearns at his presser, and he was non-committal to certain degree. I think, because he said we're in an evaluation mode every year once the season's over, and we're still in that evaluation mode. Ibby, I think this is a good way to put this portion of it to bed and kind of move forward. Rosie asks, do you think the Mets should have invested in high-end pitching in the offseason or at the deadline?
I would respond to that by saying, when you look, like, it's easy to look back on it now and question it. At the time, I thought that what they were doing made sense. Where they were at the time, I thought it made sense. You could question exactly what they could have gotten during the trade deadline. But if there's one thing that's going to be a common theme of when we start talking about the offseason this year, from my end at least, as you're talking about, should they have attacked high-end pitching in the offseason? I thought, because it was pitched as a transitional type year, doing what Stearns did made sense because he hit on the things that he tried. Looking back on it, yeah, you could say, well, I wish they would have gotten a guy that was a little more experienced. Moving forward, because you get to a point like this, I think now you see what you have. Like the whole thing we talked about with Stearns needing to see what this team is before he makes legit changes, which is why this past offseason, he didn't change that much. He brought in some guys and they worked. This year, you get to the NLCS Game 6 and you basically crap out because you don't have the experienced innings from the pitching staff. This is where the question's going to come to David Stearns and say, am I willing to spend the money, which he spoke on today, saying that money isn't a problem. Like, there's flexibility because they have a lot coming off the books. Are you going to spend the money on what I said all offseason, and that is getting innings, but now adding another word to it, getting experienced innings, guys that have been pushed and aren't going to crap out. And that's not a shot at Sean Manaea. That's the body itself just giving up. He's not used to going 190 innings. Is this why it makes a lot of sense for the Mets to go after a Corbin Burnes type? Because he can throw 200 plus innings and he's reached that plateau before and he's looking to get paid and he's been with Stearns before. Like, does that make sense? It's about finding guys and filling out a rotation, because it will be a 6-man because Senga's going to be back full time. Getting guys that, have the legs to them. I think that's why it's going to matter moving forward. Looking back, I don't think it's fair to look back and ask that question because you didn't realize or know that this team was, really willing to put out the cash for certain players where they thought it might not have fit the window that they were working in. But then seeing the window that has now been created by some guys coming in, performing, the Mark Vientos of the world, seeing what, Hefner was able to do with some of the pitchers, even though we still question some of the things with Hefner, all of that. I think it's hard to Monday morning quarterback it, but I think looking forward, it makes a lot of sense for this team to invest in some high-end pitching.
Yeah, I think all of what you said is spot on. The only thing that I'll add to it is, if you guys go back to the deadline, if you guys go back to the end of the offseason, Ibby, this is not me saying I told you so. I'm not doing that. I'm not here to do that. But I did say, if certain guys fall into your lap, go get them. I did say the Mets could have signed the same deal that the Giants signed with Blake Snell. I said that the Mets could have done that. I said that the Mets probably should have done that. I said that the Mets should trade for Blake Snell. Now, I'm not going to hold them not trading for Blake Snell against them because Blake Snell wasn't traded. And we don't know if that was a complete unwillingness from the Giants to deal Snell, or if they were asking for the moon, but the end result was he wasn't moved, so it becomes moot. So because we'll never know if Stearns tried to get Snell and it was just a non-starter. We have no idea. The one guy that I think could have helped a bit, and I think Ant talked about this on his podcast, and I talked about it too with you at the deadline. I said, it would have been nice for the Mets to get Jack Flaherty. Now, Jack Flaherty had a really good game against the Mets. Is that the reason why I'm saying it? No. Do I think Jack Flaherty is a superstar? No, but I do think the addition of another starter who could go out there and give the Mets some length because you didn't have Senga at full strength would have been great. And they weren't able to do that. And Armand brings up, would Blackburn have helped in the postseason, either starting or the bullpen? Yes.
Yes.
Another arm would have been good. That's really all it comes down to. Mr. Nobody says, sure, Blackburn could have been the long man we needed. Blackburn could have been an opener. He could have been a long man. He could have been a guy. He's a guy who can be relied on as a starting pitcher. Now, again, he's not a top flight starting pitcher, but he is a guy that would have helped. And that's why, looking back, Ibby, when you're in these series and you have to win, you're almost trying to win innings, right? It's not like the elimination game where Mendoza goes to Diaz in the 4th and 5th inning or the 3rd and 4th inning, whatever it was.
Right.
You're obviously not going to do that every game, but you are trying to eat away and win innings, which is why I never had a huge issue with him starting Kodai Senga in either series, because he's looking at it saying, okay, Senga is healthy. Senga is got some of the best stuff on the team. If he can give us an inning or two, and dare I say 3 innings, because I think they were hoping that by the Dodger series, he would have been able to give them 3.
Agreed.
That's 3 innings checked off.
Yeah.
And then we can mix and match. And you know what? If I got to go to Ryan Stanek in the 4th inning, I'll go to Stanek in the 4th inning. And then if I could go to Maton in a softer spot, that's how you have to start to manage. So I didn't have an issue with that. So my point is, yeah, Blackburn would have helped. Nunez would have helped.
Yeah.
Anybody who's not here. Look, Nunez was great all season. A healthy a fully functional Jose Buto would have helped. A fully functional Phil Maton that we had at the end of the season prior to the playoffs would have helped. Those guys both hit a wall and were not effective. Brooks Raley would have helped.
Yeah.
Nobody likes him, but you're going to tell me Drew Smith wouldn't have helped? I think he probably, I think he would have in regards to some of the other people that we ran out there. Weeks and weeks and weeks ago, I talked to you about keeping Jake Diekman over Joey Lucchesi because Jake Diekman was a more successful relief pitcher than Joey Lucchesi has ever been a pitcher, period. Well, I look at the same thing as, I'd rather have Drew Smith throw in some of those innings than Tyler McGill. Drew Smith has been a more successful pitcher in his stint than Tyler McGill has been, coming out of the bullpen. So I just look at some of those little things all of those guys have helped. So, it's a bit of a bummer, but I also don't think that you can sit here and you can take David Stearns to task for not going for it because, listen, at the deadline, he went out, he got a DH and an outfielder, he got 4 or 5 bullpen arms leading up to the deadline. He said it himself, he reworked 80% of his bullpen. He went out and he got a starter. No one that was significantly better than anyone the Mets acquired was really moved. So they did the best they could. They took their shot and it just didn't really work, or it worked. And then there was a ceiling on how much it could work.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the main thing. You can only squeeze so much blood out of that stone. I just think that, like I said before, the in-game adjustments, the things that you were hoping that they could pull off, maybe they couldn't do it because they just didn't have the horses. They didn't have the ability. They pushed it as far as they possibly could, and it just wasn't enough, and that's why I think this is going to be such a fascinating offseason because of the money, because of the things that Stern said, because of, in my opinion, at least, how the landscape looks in terms of the NL and the players that are available out there, mainly through free agency, I can pull out some names via trade as well, but mainly through free agency because that's
It's
just
harder.
money.
It's harder
It
with
is.
trades because it takes two to tango, and we don't know what's going on the other side.
But there are some guys that I am curious about via trade that I think are possible. But I really think that the free agent market this year for the Mets is going to tell a big story, and it's really going to paint the picture from David Stern's standpoint of what he thinks is truly possible with this team post NLCS Game 6 loss, going into a world where the Phils are going to be back, where the Braves are going to be healthy, where the Dodgers are going to be fully healthy when they have an actual pitching staff, and so on and so forth. And other teams are going to try to get better, the Diamondbacks of the world, what's going to happen with the Brewers, what have you. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how aggressive he is in terms of the long-term scope and the short-term scope.
I agree. I think that's something we can talk about a lot in the second half as we kind of turn the page and start to look forward. Obviously, this is going to be something we do over the next several weeks. And look, I keep shouting out these two guys because they deserve it, because their shows are great. I talked a lot about Ant Rivera and what he said over his last show. But with Ryan Finkelstein, like, this is some of the most fun that we all have. We get to play GM. We get to put GM caps on. Everybody in the comments gets to put the GM caps on. Ooh, would I go after that guy? Would I go after this guy? Would I have done this? Would I have done that? I just kind of did it a little bit, right? I kind of pat myself on the back for saying, if I were the Mets, I would have gone out and got Blake Snell. Now, would Blake Snell have been a difference maker? No idea. But could he have been? Could've. Maybe. So it's one of those situations where it becomes very, very fun. Let's jump back into the comments. You and I have been starring a bunch. I want to kind of get to a few of these as we start to change the conversation a bit. Mr. Nobody said, in one season, we got a president of baseball ops, great manager, and changed the narrative of this being a fun, successful place to play for future signings. I agree with that.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think Douglas Barnes, I didn't star the comment, so I don't want to scroll back, but he had said something like, well, maybe now other free agents won't be as inclined to use Steve Cohen's money to get better deals elsewhere. It seems like this is a place that people want to come to. Go ahead.
And we spoke on that in the offseason when everyone was talking about the transitional year. We kept on talking about how we think this team can win and how the main thing was you want to come across as a team that can not only win, but is a place where you might want to actually go. Do you see yourself as a piece that can add to this so this team can win, can progress, can get further? So yes, the amount of fun that this team had, the amount of success that this team had with guys that were given an opportunity from a prospect standpoint, the Mark Vientoses of the world, or from a free agent standpoint who was just looking to get their feet back under them after struggling for X amount of years. The Severinos, the reliever to starter to reliever back to starter, Manaya, trying to get things right, turned himself into a late time an ace for this team during this run. So you're showing yourself that you can be a destination. And of course, the winning aspect goes a long way in helping you too.
I agree. This is a good one from Brad. This Mets team got to the NLCS with only 5 bullpen arms that we trust. Yeah.
5?
That's less.
For me, it was like 2.
Less. At the end, it became 3, less because it was really Diaz and Stanek.
And then I give some Garrett late was solid too. But
over the course of the season, Ibby, there were no more than 5, right? Like it was Diaz and Garrett, and then it was like Diaz fell out of favor, and Garrett and Nunez, and then it was like Nunez got banged up, and then Garrett fell out of favor, and then Rayleigh wasn't here long enough because he got hurt, but Rayleigh was in there early.
Maton had his moment.
Maton had his moment while other people were sliding back. I do love the fact that Edwin Diaz pitched confidently towards the end. I think we're going to see a big bounce back here from Edwin Diaz next season. And the Mets could sorely use that. But I think there was so much about him coming back, missing a full season. His arm looked healthy, but his mechanics looked off. His confidence looked shaken. And we all know the difference between a confident Edwin Diaz and a not confident Edwin Diaz and what he is capable of on the mound. Maybe a couple more comments before we head into the break. Some of these, by the way, guys, if I starred them and I will get back to them. I think they'll kind of fit later on in the second half of the show. Charlie said, I don't think high-end pitching was the answer. I think a 6-man rotation at times would have helped reduce the inning loads for Minaya and Sevy, which may have helped towards the end. I agree. I think the Mets got too injured to ever get there because they did give Severino time off when they could.
Yes.
But because Senga didn't come back or came back and then got hurt again, they really could never pivot to that 6-man rotation because they had an ineffective Tylor McGill and they had an injured Kodai Senga, and they never really had 6 full starters firing on all cylinders. I think high-end pitching would have helped, but I also think, to Charlie's point, this could have easily helped as well. This one from Douglas saying Stearns wasn't going to spend lots of money or prospects this season, but definitely hinted at a big offseason. He certainly did with regards to his press conference from earlier today. And let's see. I agree to this one. I just want to pull this up from Douglas. Starting JD Martinez in the NLCS was a bit of a head scratcher. Mets were 1-4 with him in the lineup, 6-1 with Winker in the lineup. I think maybe I'm not trying to dig, Ibby. I think maybe the worst move that Carlos Mendoza made was playing JD Martinez instead of Jesse Winker. When you look at some of the at-bats that Winker had, even against a tough lefty like Banda, I think Winker should have played lefty or righty no matter what.
I agree. Like, and I was being nice, and I shouldn't have been as nice as I was when we recorded that show when he was starting, because I was pissed off that he was, because it didn't make sense from a standpoint of he didn't have competent at-bats when he was given them in other situations. Why are we giving him another start? If I saw competent at-bats, I would understand it, but I didn't understand it then. I don't understand it now. Winker, like you said, didn't matter who was on the mound, was still showing me a lot more effort and a lot more potential. And even though he might have failed in some at-bats, I was still seeing more in those at-bats than I saw out of 3 or 4 pitches that JD was getting. And it was very easy. You sluck a fastball by him. He swung and missed at a slider. There was a ball in the dirt, throw it on a slider every single time. That was it. That was the book. Once Smoltz said that on air, that's exactly what happened the rest of the time that you saw JD Martinez. Every single at-bat. It was beyond frustrating. And
this is a good one from Douglas saying, and the Dodgers only had Banda, the one lefty in the pen. Yeah. So there's really no reason to not go to Winker immediately or not start Winker, or, if they have a lefty on the mound, then you pivot to Winker almost immediately. This is not a situation of like Francisco Alvarez, where the drop-off potentially is pretty big. And Luis Torrens had some really big moments for us. Luis Torrens is going to be the backup here, I think, for a long time. And I think he's a really good player in a lot of for a backup catcher in a lot of regards. But this is not sitting down a 22, 23-year-old catcher that could change the game with one swing. This is starting a guy who's 37 years old or whatever, who hasn't looked good since August. You know what I mean? He hasn't looked good in months. So, I think that was the most confounding thing. I do agree with Ant here. I tweeted as much. He could have also had Nimmo DH and had Winker play the outfield. I know that
Ant was screaming about that the entire series. He was screaming about it.
Listen, a healthy Brendan Nimmo is better than Jesse Winker, but a Brendan Nimmo on one leg, I'm not sure is a better outfielder than Jesse Winker. I don't think Winker's that bad. It's not like it's not like your options are who's playing the outfield, Nimmo on one leg or JD Martinez. Then give me Nimmo in a fucking wheelchair. But Jesse Winker's he's not Nimmo, but he's not bad. So I think that there was some stuff there you could definitely you could nitpick on. But I don't want to turn it into that. But I did want to bring up a couple of those comments. Ibby, let's end the first half on this. Jeff Cohen says the best part, no more LOL Mets, to which Carlos Ortiz replied, did we brush off LOL Mets? Ibby, do you think LOL Mets is dead?
We've always spoken about how winning is going to change that narrative. And I think as long as this team continues to play ball like this, then yes, I do think it is dead. Even though, and I know you did something that I did during Christmas. I did this where I got into a spat with Dodgers Twitter, and I know you put out a tweet that got a lot of traction when it came to the things that were posted by ESPN and Fox.
Yo,
Again,
people were sending me screenshots on Instagram of other people sharing that post. Yeah, I guess it went crazy on Instagram too. So I mean, whatever. More traction for this show.
So mixing it up with Dodgers fans like that, and I lost where I was going. LOL Mets. I think that once this team established that they have this fight in them, that they won't roll over, and they would keep going despite people trying to make it seem like they were done and buried. And, it's a gimmick-driven team. We even had somebody in the comments just before, talking shit about the team or whatever, about the gimmicks and everything. And, it's a joke and it's annoying. And it's like, no, this team goes out there and they're playing hard baseball. And I think that for as fun as this was, and again, this is going to be a major theme for what I think this team is going to do in the offseason and why I do think LOL Mets is done. And that's, you had all of this fun this year. You showed that this team is willing to open up, play loose, not care as much, in a good way, not care, so you can go out there and play good baseball. I think ultimately that is going to breed David Stearns into the idea of taking the next step and evolving and getting certain players that add that winning aspect to a team that's playing loose. And I think that I really think that moving forward, this is the start of LOL Mets going away. Jeff Passan said as much, as he thinks that 2024 is going to be the starting point of the Mets becoming something special moving forward under the guidance of David Stearns. And I agree. And I think ultimately it comes down to this. For any baseball fan, any Mets fan's perspective when it comes to LOL Mets, do you honestly think that David Stearns is going to allow LOL Mets to be a thing? And I say absolutely not. This is a man who's one of the smartest, if not the smartest guys in the game. And I think he's going to bring forth a team moving forward, starting this offseason, where that is no longer the case. Everyone's going to try to push it. Mm-hmm. But if this team keeps winning ball games and is a tough out for anybody, it's no longer going to be a thing.
Let me give my 2 cents on this, and then we'll head into the break. Couple comments. Stephanie saying, I think it's dead. Charlie saying, from the mouths of Mets fans, I think LOL Mets is gone. But from fans of other teams, not so sure. From the jackasses at Fox and ESPN, not yet. And I think that feeds into this comment from Douglas, which is, it's not completely dead, but it's the beginning of the end. So I think those are pretty appropriate comments for a few different reasons. I think if the Mets would have beaten the Dodgers and then, dare I say it, beaten the Yankees, it's dead. Like I said last week, you dead. Slay all those dragons, you Cody Rhodes finish the story, it's dead. You could fuck right off. The Mets have the World Series. They beat the Yankees. They beat the Dodgers. They beat the Phillies. They beat the Braves. They beat the Brewers. It's dead. They were 11 games under 500. They started 0-5. They win the World Series. Dead. They came up a little short. So I don't think it's fully dead for what some of those folks said, Charlie and Douglas. I think the media is waiting. I think they're chomping at the bit. I think other fan bases, we've seen it. The guy who came into this show to talk shit. Other people have talked shit to me on Twitter about why that's a thing and why the Mets are never going to be successful. Somebody said to John Minconi earlier today, Steve Cohen isn't enough for the Mets to compete with the Yankees. Like, what are you talking about? Steve Cohen's worth $21 billion. Hal Steinbrenner is worth like $3 billion. Fuck off, dude. Are you kidding me?
1.5.
Yeah. So, there you go. So,
1.5.
Like, that's insane. Like, of course it's enough. Like, and you have to do the work, but the Mets are doing the work. It's such a lazy take. And I think that's where you have to understand. You said, David Stearns is not going to allow this to happen. Steve Cohen is not going to allow this to happen. These are two guys at the helm that can single-handedly put a knife in the back or a stake in the heart or whatever thing you want to say of LOL Mets, because it starts at the top. And for the first time in my life, essentially, Ibby, because I was born during Game 6 of the NLCS in 1986, so I didn't really see that World Series. For the first time in my life, with the Steve Cohen ownership and the leadership, the stewardship of David Stearns, the Mets have the ability to succeed because of their leadership structure and not in spite of their leadership structure.
Yes.
So I acknowledge nothing is guaranteed. Ant talked about this on his show, where you want to win it when you have the opportunity, because look what happened in 15, look what happened in 06, look what happened in 2000. Those teams all busted. We thought they were on their way to a big boom, and they all had the rug pulled out from under them. What's the difference? Those teams did not have Steve Cohen signing the paychecks. Those teams did not have David Stearns running the show. Those teams had Steve Phillips. Those teams had Wilpon. And then it had his idiot son, Wilpon. Like, those teams were never going to be set up for sustained success. And I know Brody Van Wagenen talked about winning now and winning in the future, but that is the goal. And David Stearns and Steve Cohen are the first two people I trust in my entire life of fandom to actually execute on that. So I think it's not fully dead, but I think if the Mets come out and are the best team in baseball next year, it's dead. Like, you can't, like, if they follow this up and they get to the playoffs back-to-back years, something that they've done like twice in 60 years, you have to start to realize that that shit is done. It is dead and buried. They make the playoffs 3 years in a row. It's dead. They're turning themselves into a model franchise right before our eyes. And that's why I don't think it's fully dead, but I do think it's dying. That thing is on life support.
I agree 1,000%. I just come back to, it's David Stearns. I trust him. I trust his plan. I trust the players that he's going to bring in. And we'll talk more about that in the second half, but it's on its, I think we'll be reading the eulogy for that soon enough. We'll put it that way.
I think so too. And I'll just end it on this. Game for War brought this up before. Hi, John and Ibby. Want to know why corporations, likely based in New York, like ESPN and Fox, trolled the Mets so badly after their defeat? Undercover Yankee fans? No.
It's just,
I think it's to poke fun at the Mets.
Yeah, it's because it's easy. And this is Game for War. I've said this since day one on this show. It's two teams in one, two teams in New York, just like there's two teams in Chicago, plenty of teams out in LA, in California. Like, it's always finding the punching bag and finding the one that, the other, to us, obviously has the storied and rich franchise that the Yankees are because of their history and everything. It's hard to shake that until you provide something that's positive for people to speak on. So I've always said that the media is always going to look at the Mets as a jester because they need a punching bag, because you can't always have good. You have to have good bad. You have to have, the greatness and the pathetic nature of somebody else. You need to poke fun at something because you're not allowed to speak on all good, especially in today's world where you have to have negative. It makes me so angry, as a point here, that when I make captions or titles for our shows, that a lot of times, the best ones, the best views that we get is whenever I put something negative next to Mets in the comment or in the keywords. If I have a negative word there, it takes off. If we're doing great, our numbers don't do great, because apparently when you're good, nobody cares. The
world is a nightmare.
Shit. That's really what it comes down to. It's got to be negative. So that's why I think that they do that. Plus, I think we've known this for long enough. We saw the commercials. We saw everything. They got what they wanted. They wanted Dodgers, Yankees. They wanted East Coast, West Coast. They wanted LA, New York, even though, yes, you got LA, New York in the NLCS as well for 6 games. But this is what they wanted. They wanted Ohtani versus Judge. This is their way of marketing. This is what they want. Their 2 biggest stars. This is it for them. And I think that's why they pushed it as hard as they did and poked fun as much as they did.
And like I said on Twitter, I'm not soft. I'm very thick-skinned. I did comedy for a decade. You got to be thick-skinned to do it. I understand that sometimes if you have Grimace and OMG, you're going to be the subject of ire. And this is what I replied to everybody on that tweet that you mentioned, Ibby. Not to everybody, but what I replied to a lot of people when they were like, oh, it's fair game when you have those kinds of gimmicks and stuff. it's fair game from opposing teams. It's fair game from opposing fan bases. So if the LA Dodgers posted World Series in the form of the OMG sign, I would be like, you know what? You guys beat us. Tip your cap. I'll take that one on the chin. If fan bases from other teams want to dump on us for the stuff, man, that's just trash talk. And you want to bring it, bring it. You know, that's fine. When you are the MLB itself, or you are supposedly unbiased national media, and you're going to come out here and you're going to say, Mets Grimace got knocked out. Like, dude, be better, dude. Like, what happened to journalism? It's dead. What happened to a non-bias? What happened? You could promote the game without being a shit poster like a 14-year-old. This is the account for the MLB, and you're tweeting like the worst 14-year-old kid you know. Like, that's not okay to me. And maybe that makes me old school. Maybe that makes me a dinosaur. Maybe that's why, you know, I don't have more mainstream success. Yeah, maybe maybe that's why. But you know what? I'll die on that hill because I have fucking integrity. We could come on this show and we could scream and rant and rave like that douchebag that's got that show in Philly that he was screaming during the entire NLDS. Dude, I'm not going to scream for no reason. I'm not going to pretend like Sal Licata and take a deep breath and then start yelling because it's made up. Like, I'm not going to do that. You're not going to do that. We've always wanted to be fair. We've always wanted to be balanced. And that's how I think national media should be. That's certainly how I think the MLB Twitter account should be. So honestly, they could all fuck right off. And the best way to stick it to them is to win a fucking World Series. And then all of a sudden, all that stuff will go away. Anyway, Ibby, we've done an hour. Let's do a break so that we can reset and exhale and get ready for, I don't know, the second half, the next 30 minutes, whatever the show ends up being. If you're watching live for the first time, don't go anywhere. It is just a quick 30-second break that we can reset and throw some ads in for the audio version of the show. John Saponaro, Matt Ibanez, Til Mets Do Us Part, live on YouTube, live on Twitter, courtesy of the Brella Sports Network. We will be right back. Yo, just like that, we are back live with Til Mets Do Us Part on YouTube, on Twitter, all courtesy of Brella Sports. Shout out once again to John Minconi, John Saponaro, Matt Ibanez here with you. We have gone long here in this particular episode, as I thought that we kind of would. Usually we take a break at the halfway point. We are well over that. I think we'll probably go, I don't know, somewhere between 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes more if we can get there with some of the conversations. We'll see. But Ibby, before we do that, let's get a quick word in from our friends over at Independent Safes.
Of course, John, over at Independent Safes, they are protecting homes and businesses with secure residential and commercial safes, fireproof peace of mind in every corner. Visit independentsafes.com today for security that stands strong. And as always, it's $99 or more. Get your free shipping. They'll take care of you. Let them know that Til Mets sent you. We can put the 2024 Mets in an independent safe. Lock it away. Stow away the key. Keep it. And you can look back on it down the road with fondness. Not going to lock it away and throw it in the river like we want to with a lot of people. But we can look back and keep it as a keepsake and look back and say, it was a lot of fun. But when we look back on it, I hope it's looking back at a time where it's like, that was the start of something. Yeah. That was the start of something special. And I think that's what we're going to do. Independentsafes.com. Tell them Til Mets sent you. They'll take care of you.
Mr. Nobody has another suggestion. Put ESPN in a safe and throw it in the ocean.
Fair enough.
That's fair.
Fair
maybe
enough.
I think the best way to have this conversation looking forward is first touching on David Stern's press conference. We talked a little bit about it, certain points here and there. Your overarching view, did you have a chance to listen to it or watch it?
I got a chance to listen to some of it. I read some of the excerpts as well. And shout out to Armand, who gave me his breakdown of his notes through DM on Twitter. So I was able to get an idea of everything that happened because it was happening when I was at work. So I appreciate that, Armand. Shout out to you.
Yeah, listen, man, I thought that press conference was about as good as it possibly could be.
I would agree.
look, every GM and every sport's going to give you GM speak or coach speak or whatever the hell. But Stearns was about as forthcoming as you can be.
Has been since day one.
And he has been since day one. So I'm not surprised by any of what he said. I'm happy about a lot of what he said. And he just continues to solidify for me. Again, while nothing is guaranteed, like we said at the end of the first half, he continues to solidify for me that he's the right person for the job.
He is everything. I always think back to the conversation that we had with Casey Stern on this show, where it was being reported that David Stearns was the guy. And we asked Casey, we were like, what are your thoughts on Stearns? Because at that point, he was still being tucked away and hidden really by Milwaukee, not being able to interview. I think it was around the time where he was said to be getting an interview with the Mets, or he had been because he was out of his contract, that little small area where people were confused. And we asked Casey, we're like, what are your thoughts on David Stearns? And he goes, David Stearns is probably one of, if not the top, he's a top 3 mind for baseball in terms of building in the sport. And he had mentioned the likes of like everyone talks about Andrew Friedman and everything that the Dodgers do. He's like, that's what David Stearns is. And if you give him New York, you give him his team that he grew up loving, you give him Steve Cohen's money, you give him better resources than he had in Milwaukee, you have something special. So I think everything that he has done, I trust it. Everything that he says, I trust it, because like you say, he's been forthcoming. He hasn't told a lie yet. Everything he said, is basically what he said he was going to do. So when I hear him talk about money, and I hear him talking about potential changes, and I hear him talking about the idea of going after pitching and all these things, I do it with a smile on my face. I watch it with a smile on my face. I take those notes with a smile on my face, because we finally have a guy that actually gets it from a modern baseball perspective of how things are supposed to be done now, from an analytical standpoint, to mixing it properly with a manager that listens to the analytics, but also understands players. It's like, this is everything that a Met fan has wanted for the longest time. I've been talking to you about it for 4 years now.
Yeah.
And that's been me been talking into the void for the previous 20 plus years, as I really understood baseball more and more as I got older. It's like, This is what I've always wanted. Like this is what we want, Mets fans. We're in a great spot.
It's true. You bring up the kind of the Mendoza, offshoot of that. No one can sit here and say Mendoza ignores analytics. No one can sit here and say Mendoza doesn't go with his gut. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very clear that Mendoza is the perfect blend of a modern manager. He does everything that you would look for in terms of looking at that advanced information, using it, but also going out there, talking to his pitcher and saying, hey, you still got it? I'm going to leave you in the game. Yeah. I don't care third time through. All right, I trust you. You've earned my trust, and I'm going to trust you. So, and I think that comes from, this is more about Stearns than Mendoza, although Mendoza deserves his flowers. He should be manager of the year, by the way. But Stearns also empowers a manager to be that way. And it was, look, I think Craig Counsell would have been a fine manager, but I think we've got the right guy in a guy that has, kind of been in New York, learned through that Yankee system. I know that nobody wants to hear about the Yankees, but I think some of the stuff he learned coming up through that Yankee system was invaluable, but I also think he is his own person. I don't think, unlike, maybe Willie Randolph, who was a good manager and deserved better than he got. I think Willie Randolph came here and tried to make the Mets the Yankees. I think Carlos Mendoza came here and said, this is what I learned at the Yankees. The Mets are not the Yankees. The Mets don't need to be the Yankees, and we can be our own thing. And I think Stearns even said that when they asked him about Steve Cohen's comments about being the Dodgers East. How close are you to that? And Stearns was like, I don't care. I don't want to be anybody else. I want to be the New York Mets.
Yes. And that's what it should be. Yes.
When you're an owner, if you're Cohen and you come in and you buy a team and you're out of baseball and you go, well, I look over there and I see that marquee franchise. I want to be like that. That's okay for an owner to say, especially an owner who's new to baseball. If you're David Stearns, you don't want to be the Dodgers. You want to be the goddamn Mets. Yeah, and exactly. Like Mr. Nobody, that was an epic statement. The other thing that I really loved, that was a great one for me. And look, he said a lot of stuff about alluding to a big offseason and spending money and stuff. The other two maybe that jumped out to me were when they asked him, hey, you have all this financial flexibility. Does that mean that you'll be more active in the free agent market than the trade market? And he just smirked and he was like, I kind of like making trades. Is kind of what he said. I'm paraphrasing, but he smirked. He's like, I like making trades. That's that comes off as somebody who's not afraid to make a trade, who's not afraid that prospect might go on to be something good because he's so confident in his ability and the people that he's employed in the front office to identify talent and need. And it's okay if you trade a player. It's okay if you trade a player and that player becomes something good. It's okay because you take wins and you take losses in the trade market. I like that. The other thing I liked was when they asked him about separating the emotion from making decisions. And he was like, you can't separate emotion. I grew up a Mets fan. Steve Cohen grew up a Mets fan. The emotion's always going to be in it. To me, this is a guy who is so committed and so capable at his job that those two things are why I have faith. It's the commitment and the knowing that he's good at the job.
It just comes back to the whole, he's smart for the job. He gets it. He understands New York. He's not out of his realm like other people that have been in this position before from a GM standpoint, since we never had a player of baseball ops before, but just being able to really take grasp. Like when you really think about it, like nobody has ever been able to take the New York Mets by the throat, pick them up essentially, or pick them up by their shoulder, and like just stand them up like he has in this first year. And you feel different. And like I said before, this isn't a season that ended on a whimper. This isn't a season that ends with frustration. This is us looking towards the future. And let's be honest, we haven't thought like that in a long time because of the way things have ended. And you have someone that could even go out and oppress her after the fact of losing in Game 6 in the NLCS. And here we are talking glowingly about it, how others are speaking glowingly about it, because we know what is on the horizon. You couple it with the free money that's with the $170+ million that's coming off of the books, how they're going to rework it, how they're going to are they going to re-sign certain players? Are they going to keep guys? They're going to let them go? There's going to be some changeover. How are you going to do that? How do you build off of this when a majority of the team that you built to get to this NLCS could be gone next year? How do you recreate? That's why all this is going to be so fascinating to watch unfold. But I'm very happy that this is the guy, because he understands what's the word I'm looking for? He understands what mix it takes to get to that point, because he provided, or he created said mix for 2024. So I believe that moving forward, he can do that.
And I think he said something, and Mendoza said something, even Cohen said something about, kind of being bullish, like not saying like, oh, we were happy to be here. They're like, we got here and it's great that we did. It's a bummer we couldn't seal the deal, but now we have to worry about getting back here and getting better than here. And look, that's not going to happen every year. You're going to have disappointing playoff spurts like the Phillies, right? You're going to be the better team and you're going to lose in the DS, or you're going to lose in the wild card round. But acknowledging that you now have expectations and you got to go out and meet them, that is something that you want to hear from these guys. And yeah, Carlos asked the question, does Stearns hire a GM to help him in his journey? Douglas saying Stearns basically said no to signing a GM. He did say that, Ibby. I'm not sure if you saw that. They asked him point blank.
He said, unless something comes along.
He said if a certain person becomes available, basically if somebody comes across his radar that is too good to pass up, he will interview that person. But other than that, it is not. He used something along the lines of like, it's not a priority.
Right.
To do so. And I don't think he needs to, honestly. Like, I think that he is so new. A lot of times the president of baseball ops is a guy who's been with the organization for a long time and gets elevated, and then you get a GM underneath. Right now, Stearns is president of baseball ops level in terms of an executive. Hiring him made sense to bring him there, but he hasn't been with the organization. Like, he still needs to kind of do the GM's job, a little bit more of the minutia, because I think he wants to get his hands dirty. So, I don't think he needs to. And thank you, Armand. The word he used was not eager. He is not eager. So that basically means you're not going to see a GM here. This is a good one. Douglas said, John Hurt Stearns isn't afraid of trades and got tingly about the thought of getting Brett Beatty shipped out. Yeah.
He also said he likes Brett Beatty, though.
Brett Beatty's getting fucking traded, dude. Please. He's like, oh, he's working on his versatility and, it's really showing something. Yeah, that guy's going to be playing fucking third base for the Diamondbacks or some shit. Colorado. I know they both have good third basemen. I know they both have good third basemen, but you know what I mean. He's gonna wind up on one of those. It's like, you're starting third baseman for the 2025 Cincinnati Reds, Brett Beatty. Woo! Hey, he went to Ohio State, so send him to Ohio. Why not?
Yeah.
Charlie said one of the things I heard was that he's not expecting Mauricio to make this team. His rehab is slow, and I suspect he starts the year at AAA.
I did see that as well, yeah.
I think so. I think Acuna now has the inside track to making the team as an infielder. Nothing is written in stone, but I think the depth chart has been realigned because of injuries and ineffectiveness and some other stuff that has happened. I think that the snow globe has been shaken. I think Vientos is going to be the third baseman. I think Jet Williams needs some time, right as Aunt Rivera texted, talk about Jet Williams if he loves it. I think Jet Williams is going to need some time because of the injuries this year.
Yes.
And I think that Mauricio, with his injuries, has taken a major step back. So I think Beatty has taken a step back. So right now, I think you're looking, if nothing changes, I think Vientos is the third baseman, and I think Acuna is on the team in some kind of a role.
And depending on how they handle center field moving forward, like
correct.
Acuna could be in center field. You don't know.
So it might be.
It's possible. So we'll see how that all happens. And yes, I love Jet Williams, and we'll see what happens this upcoming year. He's doing solid in the Arizona Fall League right now. He's doing okay. So we'll see what happens. But he's definitely a lot more healthier at the moment than Ronnie is. So we'll see how they both progress in AAA, AA, next season. But I do think we see them at some point. We will.
Ibby, we've got, I don't know, a few minutes left, right?
Couple minutes, yeah.
Do you want to talk quickly about the in-house free agents for the Mets and kind of use that as our jumping off point?
Sure, we can do that.
Okay. So the Mets have a few pending free agents, most notably Pete Alonso and Sean Manaea. Let's put those guys right at the top of the list. But you've got Alonso, Manaea, Jose Iglesias, Harrison Bader, JD Martinez, Adam Ottavino, Jose Quintana, Luis Severino, Jesse Winker, Ryan Stanek. And I will add Phil Maton, even though he's not technically a free agent. He does not control his own destiny, so to speak. The Mets have a team option for him at $7.5 million. But those are some pretty major contributors. I put out a tweet earlier today. I used the stoplight, green meaning go, red meaning no, yellow meaning approach with caution, as to who I would bring back. To me, Manaea and Pete are two guys that I would like to see back. Winker and Stanek are two guys that I would certainly entertain bringing back. I will add Phil Maton into that mix because I think his option is pretty reasonable at $7.5 million. So he wasn't on the graphic from SNY, but I'll put him as a maybe. And then that means that Bader, Ottavino, Quintana, Severino, JD Martinez, and Jose Iglesias are all no's for me right now.
Okay. I think I would be in lockstep with you for the most part on those names.
Mm-hmm.
I think Maton is one where I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't pick up the club and then tried to re-sign him at a cheaper price. Like that wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, Armand just said the same thing. Sorry. He says Maton gets the Ottavino treatment, option decline, brought back for lesser money. I can see that. Yeah. And I think because they control his rights, obviously once you decline the option, you lose that ability. But I think they have a little bit negotiating power there because they do have the option.
Yeah, and the other one that's going to be very interesting out of all the ones that you said is really – it's Jose Iglesias. It is, and that's mainly because of how are they going to go about second base. And I know Steph said in the comments that it's been on our tongues for the longest time. Is Jeff McNeil going to be here moving forward? Are they going to try to trade him? Are they going to try to get rid of him? Are they going to let him go? Like whatever it may be. I think that's going to really tell the story about Jose Iglesias, if he's here or not, because he could act as a stopgap. He could act as a platoon with a Luis Angel Acuna or a Jet Williams, depending on whatever happens in that situation and what happens in center field for Acuna, if he's going to be placed there. So that's the one where I'm kind of like, I'm not sure yet on what to say, because I think that there are other pieces that are really going to dictate what happens there. I'm not 100% sure that they are just going to give the starting job to, like, let's say Acuna, if he plays out of his mind, if McNeil is still there, or if, Iglesias was still there. I think it would be more of a platoon type of spot. But that's the one where I'm kind of like, I'm not sure, but I think I'm on board with you with everybody else.
Yeah, look, I knew that Iglesias was going to be a sore spot for some people. When I tweeted that out, people were like, how could you say that? Look what he did. He hit 340. He did this. He did that. I said this at the top of the show. Sometimes the most important part about catching lightning in a bottle is to know when to open the bottle and let it go again. I think what Jose Iglesias did and meant for this team was tremendous. I think there is a path to him being back on this team. But I think all of that is going to depend on what happens with a Jeff McNeil.
Yes.
And some other people, like you said. And because we can't predict the trade market the way that we can predict the free agent market, or at least, theoretically predict it, I don't know how you can, with the glut of middle infielders that the Mets have coming up, spend money on Jose Iglesias. I just don't see it. Now, if you trade Jeff McNeil, which I would be in favor of, and you want to have Iglesias and Acuna start the year as your second baseman / move around the infield players, I have no issue with that. So it's not that I have an issue with Iglesias. I just don't think that he fits if we're being realistic. Same thing with Severino. I see a lot of comments about, Ant saying he'd entertain him if the price is right. I think there's a lot of stuff here. Like, Severino enjoyed being a Met, would be surprised if they explore something with him. I wouldn't be surprised if they explore something with him. Maybe I just think that he's pitched good enough. He's not going to get another 1-year deal. And the Mets need pitching. They have Quintana and Quintana, Severino, and Manaea all as free agents, and Senga coming off of a lost season. So they're going to need pitching. But I don't know that they need to bring back all of those guys. And to me, of the three, Manaea has the highest upside. So I would go with the guy with the higher upside. That's just me.
I would agree with 100%. It's Manaea. That's the guy I want to come back. I do think it's possible. I think he wants to be here. And I think if you give the proper contract, which I think is going to be in the 3 with an option type of deal at 32 years old, going on 33, I think it makes a lot of sense for him to come back and for him to slot in a better spot, so less is put on his shoulders, so he's not going to be as overexposed as he was later in the season, as we saw in the playoffs when he's pitching 190 plus innings. You factor in a 6-man rotation, factor in all that stuff. He makes the most sense because he can provide you with that much higher of returns. I agree with you 100%. When it comes to Sevy, would love to have him back. He fits. I love the energy. But yes, price pending, and really, how do you go about filling out the rest of the rotation? That's going to answer the question if you will entertain bringing him back.
Yeah, now let me just add this to the mix. I said Severino. This is an immediate reaction. I said no to Severino. I said no to Iglesias. I will add that the Mets do have to get a lot of starting pitching. So if they go out and they give, let's say, big money to Corbin Burns, and they figure out a deal for Manaea, and in that they say, hey, here's a 2-year offer at reasonable money with an option for Severino. Like, if they want to bring back Severino, I'm not going to complain. Yeah. If Manaea is your 3 and Severino is your 4, I'm not going to complain. I'm just trying to read the tea leaves here and see where they might go in terms of investing big money. They do have to build a rotation, but I think they need a guy at the top. Now, I think Senga is great when he's healthy, But I think that when you look at what Senga is coming off of, I don't think you can rely on him to be the ace. I think you have to get Corbin Burns. I think you might have to get, people are going to get mad at me when I say this. If it's not Burns, I think you need to get Blake Snell. And I know he doesn't give you the innings, but he does give you the upside. Blake Snell can be a legit ace. I think the Mets need somebody to pair at the top of the rotation so that they can go and pick your poison. Let's say it's Corbin Burns. Corbin Burns 1, Senga 2, Manaea 3. After that, if you want to tell me that Severino is your 4 and David Peterson is your 5, I will take that. I will be happy with that. But I just don't know, Ibby, that's how that shakes out. I just don't know if that's where you're going.
I just put into the chat.
I saw what you did. Well, you know what
we're gonna make a bells for play. No, I do. I get it. I totally understand. I'm just messing with you. But maybe I won't get a bells for Blake thing for John. No, but it definitely makes sense. But it's really going to be dependent on how they attack the top end of things. I was talking with Armand about it before we started the show on Twitter, and we were just going back and forth about Manaea and the potential contract and stuff. And it's like, I don't think it's going to take that much. And when I say that much, I know Darren put into the comments like 3 years, 60 million, 20 a year. And I'm like, if you're floating that around, I honestly think that's all it's, I don't want to say all, but if you're in that area of like 60 to $75 million over 3 with the option type of year, like I think that's going to be enough. Because here's the thing. I don't think people, they look at the season he had, how he finished, they're like, this guy's going to get paid big. He's going to opt out. He's going to get this huge contract. And it's like, they also watch this guy, stumble at 190 innings. They're like, am I going to pay this guy 4 or 5 years at over $100 million? Like, no, you're not going to do that.
He's not going to get that's ace money. It's low end ace money.
He's not going to get that.
He's not going to get that. The guys, first of all, the pitchers who get these crazy, $300 million contracts, those are young aces that sign those deals. Manaea, even if he was an ace, is not getting that deal.
He's 33 years old.
33 years old. So that's not going to be. So now you're looking into the lower end of ace money, which is touching that 100, 120, $150 million range.
That either.
He's not getting that. I think this that Armand just put in the chat would be the high watermark. 4 years, $80 million, $20 million a year. Fine.
That's more than a guy that I really, really like, and that's Sonny Gray, and he got 3 years with an option at $75 million.
Yep.
And Sonny Gray is and look, I love what Sean Manaea did for us. Sonny Gray is a much more accomplished starting pitcher in Major League Baseball than Sean Manaea is. 100%. And he, whether you want to talk about righty versus lefty, I don't care. Like, what he provides for a team is better than Manaea. And he got $75 million with an option that's a club option, not even a player. It's a club option. So they can boot him to the curb after 2 years now if they want to, and avoid paying him that $30 million. So it's even less than the overall 75. So I don't think, I really think if you said to him, hey, we're going to give you 3 years, $66 million, like $22 million a year, I think he would take it. I know it's Boris. He's a pain in the ass and he'll fight for more, but I think something like that, I think could get it done for sure.
I think it's fair market value. Ibby, we got to get out of here in a couple minutes. Let's just do a couple rapid fire things that'll kind of lead into, our free agency talk in the future. 2 guys whose fates have been tied together for a while. Pete Alonso, Juan Soto. I said the other day, I think it's 65% and climbing that Juan Soto returns to the Yankees. I'm only saying that because I think that the Yankees, he's putting the Yankees in a position where they're going to have to try to do it. I still think that Juan Soto is going to the highest bidder because that's what he has always said. I think Ken Rosenthal or Jeff Passan, somebody just reported it too. He's going to take the most money. Now, if Steve Cohen wants to outbid the Steinbrenners, I think he will get Juan Soto. But I think that Juan Soto's play and the Yankees making the World Series is putting it in a position where maybe the Yankees can't get outbid and they just say, fuck it, and they just match whatever dollar amount. So I think it's 65% right now that he goes back to the Yankees. But now, after what happened in the playoffs, and I've been beating this drum the whole time, I think the chances are higher. I think it's 60% that Pete Alonso is back with the Mets.
I will say this. The overall, how this pans out, okay, how this pans out between these two players is going to be the entire focus of this Mets offseason, the entire focus. And I believe that Pete Alonso has put himself in a spot to come back here because it ended on a better note. I thought Stearns spoke highly of him today. It makes sense as a foundational player from a marketing standpoint, the home runs, all of it. I would say, yes, it's more than 50-50 now. I can put it at 65 that he could come back because I don't think he's going to, again, reach the amount that Scott Boras thinks he's going to reach, regardless of inflation and contracts over year to year.
I think he's going to get more than that extension they offered him.
You think he's going to get more than
158?
You think he's going to get more than that?
At 175 to 200. That's my thought. I think he gets. I think the Mets can maybe. I think the Mets can sign him for 175, 180.
I still question it because of where they fall with the other man that you mentioned. I know money's just money, and I know they said they can spend, but I do think they're going to put a healthy chunk of cash into pitching. Now, I don't want to say it's one or the other, but I have said before, if I have a choice, I know who I'm picking. And I think any smart baseball mind knows who they should pick. If it's between the two of them,
Soto's better than Pete.
But I honestly think when I said before about changing the attitude from going from fun-loving to winning ball club and dropping that narrative and attitude that said player brings to a team, I think Juan Soto is that player. I've said it since day one. I think that if this team is going to make a move, that David Stearns is going to put a stamp on something. Now, again, he could stay with the Yankees. I'm not using this as a platform to be that Mets fan that's just like, I want to just take from the Yankees. That's not the point here. It could happen. He could stay. But the point I'm making is that's the player. Like, that is the player that if you are going to legitimately break the bank on someone, this is it. This is your chance. This is a 26-year-old. This is the guy. David Stearns, when he was in Milwaukee, put his stamp on a player via trade and then extended him and kept Christian Yelich because it made sense for that team. And he went out there, got the guy, kept him. Made sense. This is New York. This is big-time money. This is Steve Cohen. You put a stamp on a player, you put a stamp on a future Hall of Famer. This is the guy that shows he likes the East Coast, and he's thrived in the New York spotlight. I'm not thinking about the taking away from I don't give a shit about that aspect. I don't care. That's not it. I'm focused on building a team that matters, building a team that can win. And I think Juan Soto is an absolute winner. And I think that the Mets are very much going to be involved. Whether the money is enough, we'll see. But I really think that this is the guy that you legit break the bank on. I don't care. This is the guy.
I agree. Despite what I said about, I think there's a higher likelihood now of him going back to the Yankees just because of what they're doing as a team and how hard it's going to be. Steve Cohen, we talked about in the first half jokingly, he has $20 more billion than Steinbrenner. If he wants Juan Soto, there's not a fucking thing the Yankees can do about it.
There's no reason why he shouldn't. This isn't Aaron Judge. This isn't
Aaron Judge.
Nice.
This is not a legacy Yankee. This is not a, hey, back off our guy.
It's not.
And I've been banging this drum and saying this with a lot of confidence, but I've been saying this, Ibby, since the offseason.
Both.
Get both. Sign Pete, sign Soto. You want to kill LOL Mets? Get two of the best players in the sport and put them on the same team and add them to Lindor and add them to Nimmo. And if you have this and much trust, that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
You're paying Nimmo. You're paying Lindor. You pay Alonso. You pay Soto. Right now, Alvarez isn't making money. Right now, Vientos isn't making money. You trade Jeff McNeil. You put Acuna at second base. You're talking about a team. You can pay some money around, Ibby. I don't think it's beyond the scope of possibility for the Mets to get Soto and Pete and still come away with a big pitcher and still sign Manaea. Because like Ant, and I know that's a lot. I know that sounds crazy, and it sounds like I'm playing video game baseball. This is going to be like 2009, the Yankees offseason. They're going to make some big moves. The Yankees signed CC Sabathia, Mark Teixeira, and AJ Burnett. I think the Mets can make a splash like that. I think the Mets can go bigger because it ain't 2009 anymore. You're talking about $300 million payrolls. Go out and get me Corbin Burns, Juan Soto, bring back Alonso. Do it.
We'll see. We will see. It is possible, but we will see.
I will say this. I don't know if this is crazy. I would rather have – you're probably some of you are going to disagree with me. I would rather have Pete and Soto than one of those two guys in Corbin Burns. Give me the everyday players over the pitcher. Pete Alonso played in all 175 games the Mets played this year. Every single one of them. I don't know what Juan Soto's number was, but I bet you it was pretty high. I know that Lindor's number was he was going to play in every game were it not for the back injury. Like, Ibby, give me those guys that play every day and make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that they are going to attack pitching hard because they want the experienced innings. And I still think it might be a one or the other type of situation, depending on what Pete really wants money-wise. But get me the guy, man. That's the guy I've been wanting for the longest time. It's the guy that I circled the moment Steve Cohen became owner. This is the guy. That's the one you go after. It is. 100%. I'm with Ant. It could be a Yankee type of offseason from 2009. Makes a lot of sense. They did that offseason because they wanted to go out and win, and they wanted to get those guys to get over the hump, to get where they wanted to go. And those three guys made a huge difference. And this team got close. You want to compete. You want to compete with the Braves, a healthy Braves team, a healthy Dodgers team. The Phils being back, it's still in your division, obviously. You go out there. Yeah, this is what you have to do.
I know I don't want to beleaguer the point, but Ibby, I made this comment a while ago. Thank you, Charlie. 157 regular season games for Soto. He's played in every playoff game, so just a few games short of every day. Look, you and Mr. Nobody mentioned the Braves. You just mentioned the Dodgers. You mentioned the Phillies. The Dodgers have Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, and Mookie Betts. The Braves have Austin Riley, Ronald Acuna Jr., and Ozzie Albies, and Matt Olson, and Michael Harris. The Phillies have JT Realmuto, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber.
Trey Turner.
The Mets have, right now, Pete Alonso, Lindor, and Nimmo. And Vientos is working his way into the conversation as a budding superstar. But, listen, get fucking Juan Soto and get Pete Alonso. Like, that's how you have to compete. So that's why, like, when I say I know it's a lot, and Ant saying, John, speak it into existence, Burns, Alonso, Soto, Manaea, like, that's what the Dodgers do. The Dodgers went out and bought Tyler Glasnow and Shohei Ohtani and Yoshi Yamamoto. The Yankees have Garrett Cole, Aaron Judge, Mike's
the reason why
Stanton, all these guys.
This is my final point that I'm going to get out of here. But the last thing, and why you can do that, and why the Dodgers can do that, and why you're still trying to emulate the Dodgers, even though David Stearns is proper in saying we want to be the New York Mets, in order to be a top flight team like that spends that type of money and that can continuously spend that type of money. I said it since day one. You have to develop your players. So like you said before, you can move guys around the diamond that are cheap, but they provide you with excessive success on field. You have that in players. You hope that it's better next year for Alvarez. You hope that this continues with Vientos. You hope that you have something in Acuna or Jet Williams or Drew Gilbert or whomever. Doesn't matter. because when you have those guys providing, you can spend the money elsewhere because you have those guys for cheap for 5, 6+ years before you got to worry about paying out more money. That's what it's all about. That's how you win.
Ibby, you're spot on, because those guys that you mentioned, like the Acuñas, the Williams, the Gilberts, those guys, if you have these top flight guys here producing, the Lindors, the Sotos, the Alonsos, etc., you don't even need, we talk about these prospects not panning out necessarily. You don't need Acuña to be a star. You need Acuña to be a good player that can play around the diamond. You need, like the way he was when he filled in for Lindor. You know, the Dodgers thought Gavin Lux might be a star. Gavin Lux doesn't need to be a star now. No, Gavin Lux is a good baseball player, and that's all he needs to be. Tommy Edman is a good baseball player, and he went off against the Mets, but that's all he needs to be, is just good. And that's why you're so spot on, is that these guys just need to be good. They don't need to be great.
That's it.
And so you need to continue to build that way. Look, we've gone long. It is a long show. We appreciate everybody. Ibby, I'm going to pull this comment up from Johnny Boy saying, guys, I wanted to say thank you to the both of you guys. You guys made this season great as well. This Met team is magical. Thank you, guys. Thank you for saying that.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to you, Ibby, for doing this show with me every year. You know, for the last, what has it been, 3 years, 4 years?
It went on 4 years almost, yeah.
And thank you to everybody who listens. Thank you to everybody who watches. Thank you to everybody who is here live every week. And there are so many of you. This is something that Ibby and I care about so much. And we do it because we care about it so much. But you guys make it possible. So thank you.
Thank you so much to each and every one of you. As always, please like and subscribe the video to the channel. We are growing. We're trying to reach watermarks throughout the offseason. The offseason, we're going to have a lot of fun. We see a lot of growth, new people. Hopefully, new people jump into the chat, join the conversation. We will be here as often as we can be. Next 2 weeks, we're probably going to take off. We're not going to be here probably for the next 2 weeks. We want to let the World Series blow over and then really hit the offseason talk, since, like we said, we think our Mets are going to be really invested, really involved, and involved with a lot of rumor and conjecture and all these types of things, which is where we have our most fun as we put our GM hats on. But as John said, thank you so much to each and every one of you. We had a lot of growth this season in terms of new eyeballs, in terms of subs to the channel, in terms of followers on Twitter, what have you, to my personal page, to John's personal page, whatever it may be. We are nothing without you. We enjoy having each and every one of you being a part of the show. The Armands, the Mr. Nobodies, the Carloses, the Johnny Boys, the Raels, everyone that's been a part of this show, the ones that we've been able to meet in person. You all are awesome that listen to us after the fact, whatever it may be. Thank you so much. We're going to continue doing this for as long as we possibly can. But thank you. And as always, let's go Mets.
Yeah, and like Ibby said, next 2 weeks we won't be here. We'll let the World Series play out. And it's nice to be this far into the season, Ibby, and only take a couple weeks off, because we always get to the end of the Mets season, whenever that may be, and then we let the rest of it play out. But the last couple, last year it was see in a month, because the Mets season died on a vine, and there was no reason to cover the playoffs. So we're not going to be gone for very long. Just 2 weeks, let the World Series get over with. There's not going to be any moves or anything of significance. We also, so many people said this. Ant said it. Ryan said it. We need a break. This has been a roller coaster of a season. It has been emotional for all of us. We need a little bit of a pause. Ibby's so busy with work. Fortunately for me, my work has cooled down this time of year. But I'm staring at a wall of boxes. I got a ton of shit to do at the apartment, try to get everything set up. So the work, the break will be nice. So, yes, as always, LFGM, and we will see you guys in a couple weeks. And we'll just start really diving into the offseason with our New York Mets. So I'm John. That's Ibby. This is Til Mets Do Us Part. See you guys in a couple weeks. Peace.